Welcome to my house. Welcome to the Structure Talk podcast, a production of Structure Tech Home Inspections. My name is Reuben Saltzman. I'm your host, alongside building science geek Tessa Murray. We help home inspectors up their game through education, and we help homeowners to be better stewards of their houses. We've been keeping it real on this podcast since 2019, and we are also the #1 home inspection podcast in the world, according to my mom. Welcome back to the Structure Talk podcast. Tessa, great to see you as always. How are you doing today?
Hey, Reuben. I'm doing well. I'm happy that I have air conditioning and that I am inside today. How about you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. As we are recording right now, it is hot as blazes. I just went out and the thermometer doesn't seem to, I don't know, it doesn't really register how hot it is. I just went out to my truck to grab something and I just about didn't make it back.
And that's saying a lot because you love the heat. You
sit
out there and you marinate in it. It's 96 in Red Wing right now. But what you're talking about, that added oomph factor that makes it hard to breathe, is the high humidity we have right now. It was really high humidity. I walked outside this afternoon and it hit me. It felt like Florida. It felt like we're in Florida.
Yeah. And I know the people in Florida and Arizona and whatever, anybody listening is just rolling their
laughing
eyes
at us.
Yeah. It's like when we hear them complaining about it's 20 degrees here.
Yeah.
We're like,
it's 30 degrees. Yeah. It's freezing.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
It's hot for us. But I'll tell you, I am going to be outside. I still have to do my outdoor workout for this 75 hard program I'm doing. I got to do an outdoor workout today yet. So it's going to be hot.
Gosh. How is this like your 45 minutes in the afternoon you have to do?
Yeah.
We're going to be outside
45
working
minutes
out.
anytime. Yeah.
Oh, it seems like you should be able to bend the rules when it's a threat to your safety and your life.
That would be called 75 medium.
Oh my God. Well, please pack some liquids with you, some electrolytes. Make sure you hydrate. I definitely
will. And I think it'll be an easier one. I'm probably going to go play disc golf or perhaps go for a walk. I don't know.
Maybe a walk. Walk sounds good. Yeah.
Possibly so.
Oh, crazy. Well, so what's the topic for today? What do you want to dive into?
Well, today, I think this is going to be a follow-up to a blog post I wrote. I probably did it about 10 years ago. I had somebody, we were inspecting their house and we got an email from someone saying, "Hey, you guys have been there for 4 hours and I'm kind of freaking out. Is this bad news for me? Does this mean I have a bad house?" Because this was a really long home inspection. And the title of the blog post was, "Does a long home inspection mean bad news? Is this bad for a seller or maybe bad for a buyer? Does this mean you're buying a bad house if your inspector is there for a really long time?" And I thought that's a great question. A lot of people wonder that. And even me, when I've sold my own house, being a home inspector, I might even drive by the house or just see what's going on. And if I still see they're there, I'm biting my own nails like, ooh, what's going on? What's the home inspection? It's a nerve-wracking experience.
It's like waiting in the
house inspected.
It's like waiting in the waiting room for the doctor to come out after a family member's having an operation or something. You're like, the longer it goes, the more anxious you get. And you're like, it cannot be good news, right?
Yes. Do not keep me waiting.
Right.
Exactly. So I thought it would be good to just talk about all of the different variables that affect how long it takes to conduct a home inspection. And once we're done, hopefully people will understand that it doesn't mean you've got a bad house just because the home inspection took a long time. It just means the home inspection took a long time. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no meaning behind it.
And I think this is a good topic so that anyone listening who's not a home inspector can kind of understand some of the challenges a home inspector might face, or these variables, as you say, that might extend their time on site.
Yeah. So I've already got my list, Tessa, but why don't we start with you? I want to hear you talk about some of the stuff that comes to your mind first, and I'll bet you'll touch on most of the stuff on my list.
Probably. Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind for me is obviously the bigger the house, the longer you're going to be there usually.
Yes.
That's kind of common sense. So anything I'd say square footage wise, I don't know. If there's anything that's over, 3,000 square feet, 3,500 square feet in my mind, that's like, okay, it's a little bit of a bigger house. But then the next thing, the next factor that comes to mind is like the age of it. And
Uh-huh.
also if it's been remodeled or they've had several additions. Those things kind of go hand in hand because you
Yes.
might have a 3,500 square foot or a 4,000 square foot house that was built in 2020 and it's, brand new and you fly through that thing. But if you've got a 4,000 square foot house that was built in 1910 and it's had 3 different additions to it, that is a different story.
Tessa, I recorded a video today talking about this, and I almost said exactly what you just said.
Did you
I mean,
really?
yes, yes. That's
Yeah.
almost exactly word for
Yep.
word what I said. I mean, we
Yeah.
are seeing eye to eye on this. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think square footage, I think it's additions, and I think it's age are probably my top 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yep.
when we price our home inspections, we price them based on the size of the house and the age. Those are both things that make an inspection more expensive. I
Yeah.
wish we could figure out additions and remodels. I wish there was a way to compensate for that. Because
Totally.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
those make the inspection take longer because you got
Yeah.
this addition and all of a sudden maybe they had to put in a sub panel. There's another electric panel you got to look at. And then maybe they've got a new HVAC system. You've got another furnace, another AC system to look at.
Yep.
Maybe they've got another attic. Oh
Yes.
my goodness. Attics take a long time, right?
They definitely do. Yeah. And kind of just adding on to what you're saying, like anytime you get a house that has had several additions or remodels, or the bigger it is, the more likely you are to have additional complex systems that
Yes.
take more time. HVAC, electrical, attics, crawl spaces. So it's just the more complicated the house, the bigger the house, the different levels, layers of it, the more likely you are to have these additional things that just add to the time on site.
Yeah. And now, so just talking about attics, how long does it take you to inspect an attic? And we're talking about moving stuff, setting down your tarp, setting up your ladder, accessing the attic, inspecting it, putting the panel back, putting your ladder back, shaking out your tarp, vacuuming up the floor, dusting yourself off. How long does it take you to inspect an attic?
You hit a lot of good points there, but you also forgot moving everything out of the closet if you have to.
Yeah. Yes. And putting it all back, hopefully, so nobody knows you were there.
Oh my gosh. Best case scenario, let's just say you don't have to, move a bunch of stuff. It's a really easy location that you can set your ladder up into, and you can pop the attic access open. It's easy to get open. And let's say it's a reasonably sized attic. It's just one attic. It's simple. You can get into it. You can look at everything. You don't have to be, crawling through various different levels and spaces to look at everything. I'd say like on a best case scenario, like from start to finish, maybe 20 minutes.
Okay.
I don't know. It could be less, it could be more. Again, depending on the size of the house and how big the attic is. If you've got a really big attic and you're spending a lot of time in there, I've spent, I don't know, there's some houses where I feel like I've been up there forever. Or if there's multiple
not
attics.
on a day like today, right?
No, definitely not on a day like today. On a day like today, you pop your head up, you go up there for a few minutes and you come back down. But the cleanup is what takes a while. The setup and the cleanup is what usually takes the most time, I think. How about you?
And for sure. It's the same thing for me.
Yeah.
It's just all of the prep work.
Yeah.
Because when you're done, you don't want to leave any evidence that you were ever at the house. No fingerprints, no nothing. On those white access panels, I'll go and I'll do the surgical scrub with my hands in the bathroom, just scrubbing them for about a minute before I even touch that panel, because I don't want to leave fingerprints, or putting gloves on. One of the two.
Yeah, definitely. And then, I mean, sometimes you run into challenges too. I mean, have you ever dropped anything in an attic and you've had to go back and find it? Or,
yes. Yes.
I mean, so there's stuff like that can happen too, where a home inspector's not counting on those challenges,
Yep. Yep.
And
Exactly.
so
All of that adds time. And then crawl spaces. We don't have a lot of those here in Minnesota, but
thank
it's kind
goodness.
of the same thing. Thank goodness.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is. It's the same kind of challenge where you've got to get geared up, put on your stuff, and then dig in there. And depending on what you find and how big it is, you could really have to spend some time digging in that crawl space.
Yeah. And for some of them, they're pretty nasty. So
Yeah.
you'll want to change your clothes before you even go in there. I know
Yeah.
I always kept a Tyvek suit or an extra pair of sweatpants and sweatshirt in my truck that I would
Yep.
change into before going into the
Yep.
crawl space, because some of those are just disgusting.
Yes. Yeah. Getting all geared up, the respirator, the gloves, the headlamp, all of that, getting, your gear out of the truck and changing afterwards and getting cleaned up all takes time.
Can you imagine being one of the inspectors in the South where you got to get in those crawl spaces where you got to access from the outdoors and it's all
No.
unconditioned, getting all bundled up and all that stuff today?
No, I can't. And I so much respect to you inspectors that have to do that at the majority of your inspections, because I don't think I could. I'm going to admit it. I don't think I'd want to be an inspector if I had to go into crawl spaces like that every single day.
Yeah. Yuck.
In those conditions. It's nasty.
We got to do stuff in the cold, but at least when it's cold, you can put on more layers. I don't mind being around outside if I can have shorts and a t-shirt on, but if I got to cover up my arms and legs, I'm going to die.
And the fact, when it's cold, everything's frozen, nothing stinks. But when it's, 90 degrees and super humid and it's outside and you've got sewage that's been leaking underneath the house for who knows how long, and puddles of water that doesn't evaporate and all these bugs and insects and things, that's a whole nother level.
Yeah, that's where it gets extra funky. Yeah. Yeah. Mad props to our Southern home inspectors who got to deal with all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So complicated houses and these additional spaces like attics and crawl spaces can really add time. And especially if you get a house that's had several additions and they might have 2 or 3 separate attics or 2 different crawl spaces. Those are the things that you show up as a home inspector. You do your quick kind of walkthrough, initial kind of look at the house, and you see those things and you think, oh man, I'm going to be here a while.
Yes, exactly. And then another variable I got to add on is the roof, how you got to inspect the roof. Now, the easy scenario is just a rambler. You take your little portable ladder, you lean it up against the roof, you hop on up anywhere you please, you walk around, you scamper over the whole thing, inspect it, and you get down. Yeah. Love those. Piece of cake. But now flip that, and now you've got a 2-story roof where there is no lower story roof. You don't have any access. It's too steep for you to even walk. What do we do in that case, Tess?
You're setting me up to say that we use our extension ladder and we set it up on every single side of the house and move it around so we can get a good view of the shingles in person. We do have some situations where maybe that's not feasible due to lot lines or what have you, and we can use a drone. But worst case scenario, you've got a house where you've got to use an extension ladder and you got to move that thing around multiple times to get different views.
Yeah, so time consuming. And
oh my God.
When we do call in the drone, I say we call in the drone. We don't equip all of our inspectors with drones because the times when we need them are so few and far between. It doesn't make sense to have everyone on our team licensed by the, what is it, the FAA? Is that the license we got?
I don't know. And you know what? It's funny. I was just talking with a roofing contractor the other day who came out to give an estimate with the client I'm helping. And this company used a drone because this roof was a challenge. And they kind of got the pictures we needed with that drone. I asked him about that very question, Reuben. He didn't seem to know anything about it. So I don't know.
What?
Now, technically, this company, I will not name names. They are in Wisconsin. I have no idea
that figures then.
What the rules are. But Wisconsin does require licensing for home inspectors, which Minnesota does not. So I don't know if they're more lax on drone stuff or if once you get out of like the metro area, the rules don't really apply. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure this is a national thing where if you're using a drone for a
Okay.
business, you need to be licensed. And I've heard it's not that easy to get licensed. Like, it's a difficult exam. I know Eric
Huh.
took it on our team,
Okay.
and he's
Yeah.
the one doing the drone inspections on our team. If we need it, Eric, if we call him the drone strike,
Yeah.
Eric's going out there and droning the roof. But they're few and far between.
Yeah.
We can get the vast majority of them done with the ladder, but we're
Okay.
getting long-winded here. The point is, some roofs are really quick and easy to inspect. Other ones take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's relative to how close it is to the ground typically.
Yeah. And how many levels there are too.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes you'll pull up to a house and it's got two kind of different roof levels, an upper level, a lower level, and you can't walk from one to the other. So you might need to set up different ladders or do a roof hop. Sometimes you can bring a lightweight ladder up to the lower roof with you and set it up so you can walk from the lower roof to the higher roof with that ladder. But all of that, again, takes more time, like you said.
Sure. And the number of roof coverings, if you've got various types of roof coverings, that'll add. I still remember first home inspection I ever did, there was 4 different roof coverings at this house. It was so intimidating.
You remember that because it scarred you for life. You still
scarred me. Yes, they had a flat roof, which we call rubber, but it's actually an EPDM membrane. It had asphalt shingles. It had wood shakes, and there was one other one. It may have had roll roofing or so. I don't remember what else, but I know there was 4 different types of roof covering, and I was pretty freaked out. I felt like I wasn't even qualified to do the inspection. And my dad was out of town, and it was a top agent, and he was just really pushing. My dad's like, "You can do it." I'm like, "I'm not ready yet. I haven't done enough practice inspections. I don't even know how to write a report." He's like, "No, you're good. You're good." Okay, here we go.
You know what that story reminds me? The apple does not fall far from the tree, because I feel like that's exactly what you did to me too.
You had a little bit more practice, though.
I think I did. Yeah, I was definitely in training probably way longer than you were, but I felt the exact same way. And I remember one of my first houses was very complicated too, and it was in Minnetonka. It had several additions to it, and it had multiple different roofs. And I just remember getting there thinking, where do I even start? Yes. Feel so overwhelmed and stressed out before you even start.
Yes. Oh, I know exactly how you feel, Tess.
Yeah.
Right. And then, okay, last one on the house. Last one that comes to my mind is deferred maintenance. And I'm doing air quotes when I say deferred maintenance, because we all know that this is a euphemism. Yeah. How else would you describe this loving term that people use to describe houses?
I think, like you said, just houses that have not been maintained throughout the years. So obviously, the more problems, issues, defects you come across, the longer the report, the more things to look at, the more time it takes.
Yep. And that's the one that people are kind of freaking out about is it all about deferred maintenance? And that's just one of the items, but we can't skip over it. When things are in bad shape, it does take longer to inspect, to document stuff, to dig a little bit harder. It does make a difference. And I do just got to say, deferred maintenance it's a euphemism for not maintained or poor condition.
Yes. Yep. Definitely. Yep. I think those are the main ones. And you mentioned it briefly earlier. We didn't really dive into it much, but the more electrical panels or sub panels you have, the more heating systems, cooling systems, different systems you have. I mean, we're testing all of those. And it takes time to test all of them. And, that really adds to how much time you're on site too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the house. Now let's talk about the inspector themselves. I think this is a huge variable. Even having within our company at Structure Tech, we have a very defined process. It's the same expectations. You got to do this on the roof. You got to do this. You got to do that. Some home inspectors will just get it done faster than others. There's the human variable there. But then going from company to company, you can have very different standards from what they do. I mean, you just described what we do for a roof. It can take us a lot of time to inspect a roof, but there is no requirement for home inspectors to even pull out a ladder when they're inspecting a roof. And I know it's going to shock some people, but home inspection standards don't require it. All you need to do is inspect the roof. And if you feel like you're qualified to inspect it from the ground, you can use the zoom lens on your camera, or you could use binoculars, whatever. And that could be the extent of your inspection. And I know there are companies who do that.
Yeah.
So
you're right. That's a big variable too, just how it's inspected and the person that's inspecting it.
Yep. And same thing with attics. There's no requirement for a home inspector to walk around in an attic. All they got to do is pop the access panel and take a look from there. That's all standards of practice actually require.
Which it's crazy to me, because how many times have you inspected an attic where there was something in the far corner that you found that was significant that you would not have been able to see from the attic access?
A gazillion times. And I
feel
remember
like most of the time.
Yeah. My dad's quote is, anytime you get lazy, that's when you're going to miss something.
That's when it bites you.
Get to that furthest reach of the attic.
Exactly.
And my trick was when there was an attic where it was really tough to get to the far reaches or a crawl space, I'd always pull out a business card and I'd leave it there.
I love that. Yes. Might as well.
We've been here.
Let it be known. Yep. You put in the effort.
Yeah.
I think another factor too, this really changed the amount of time we were on site, was whether or not the client or the agent showed up too and had questions for us. Or if a seller was there and remained at the house, that would add to time. So those are those are factors that we can't always control as home inspectors, and you don't know till you get on site. And also just our report writing system. We used to do it, basically after the fact, and we would take notes and take pictures and then go home and write it. And we've switched over, to a software where we're just entering in data while we're on site. So I think all of those factors can come into play too.
Definitely. So that's all home inspector stuff. And then, you talk about the client. I got to mention engineers. What about when you're doing an inspection for an engineer, Tess?
We love engineers because
we love them.
They think about all of the details and they have a lot of questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I always like to joke that engineers are never satisfied with your answer until they can repeat it back to you in their own words. Like that's what engineers need. And like you said, we love them. This is not a knock against them. That's just how they are.
Yeah, it's how their brain works. Yep. They need all the information and they need the data and they need proof. And it takes time to explain things in a way that's acceptable to them. So
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
All right. And then of course there's all the other one-off things that is just, the list is way too long. But I remember one time I had tripped a GFI using my tester. They didn't wire them the way you should. They had a bunch of GFCIs wired downstream from each other, and I tripped the last one in the circuit. So they all tripped at the same time, and there was like 6 of them. And I must have spent 45 minutes hunting around this room to reset them in the proper order to get all of them energized again. It took forever. So there's just those stupid little one-off things that you just can't account for, right?
Oh my gosh, I'm laughing because yes, I hear you, and I've been there in that exact same situation, and it's awful. But the one situation that comes to mind too, you'll remember this. I'm sure I've shared this story on the podcast before, but the one inspection I did, this was kind of in the beginning of my inspecting career, where I tripped a GFCI outlet on the exterior of the house, and it tripped all the power to the garage, and the garage had a garage door opener, and that was the only way to get in. There was no side door. There was nothing else. And I locked myself and the homeowner out of the garage. And I remember I texted you, Reuben. I was like, Reuben, I don't know what to do. And do you remember what you did?
Oh, I sure do. I sent you a YouTube video on how to break into the garage using a coat hanger.
You sure did. And you will not believe, I had a wire coat hanger in my car. I don't know why, because I don't just drive around with coat hangers in my car, but for some reason I had one in my car. And sure enough, I watched the video, and within 5 or 10 minutes, I had gotten into the garage.
Yeah, you texted me back like 5 or 10 minutes later. You're like, I'm in. I'm like, oh my goodness, this girl is the biggest rock star we have ever hired. She is unstoppable.
You know, it's probably wrong to feel good about having a win on a kind of almost like a criminal level, but that's exactly what it was. I learned how to break into someone's garage, and I did it successfully very quickly. So luckily I never had to do that again.
Yes.
But exactly, all those little hiccups that you don't even know can happen, that happens sometimes when you're on site.
Yep. All that little stuff that's tough to account for. So, the bottom line is, all things being equal, a longer home inspection probably isn't good, but things are never equal. You can never say that. And so even if the inspection is scheduled for 4 hours and it takes up every minute of that, and the people end up leaving late, this doesn't mean bad news. It just means that there's stuff that you don't know was going on. It took longer because it took longer. And that's all you can know. So a long home inspection does not mean bad news. That's really the bottom line here.
Yep, exactly. Just like a really long home inspection report doesn't necessarily mean you have a terrible house either.
No, good point. Yeah. It means the home inspector put in a lot of recommendations for maintenance or upgrades or just informational stuff like, hey, here's your main water shutoff valve. In emergency, turn this handle. Here's a picture of it and an arrow. And here's your main gas valve. Here's a picture of it and an arrow. And all these things are going to increase the length of the report. This is a manual for the house. It doesn't need to be a 10-page report to be a good house. You can have a 30, 40-page report, and it's still a great house. It just means your inspector's giving you more information about it.
Exactly. Yep. Well, this was fun. I'm sure we're missing some things. So if there's anyone out there that's listening that wants to add to this conversation or has some stories to tell, shoot us an email. Reuben, how do they get a hold of us?
Please email us structuretalk at... No. What am I doing? No, I got it wrong, Jeff. It's podcast.
That's right.
Podcast at structuretech.com. Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. Well, great to see you, Tess. Great discussion.
Good to see you too.
We will see you all next week.
Catch you next time.